I'm trying to figure out what to name this series.
Oh, sure.
This is now our second episode about MASH. We did the movie last year. This is the first one of the TV show. There will be a few of the TV show eventually.
We'll be covering the song spinoff, The Monster Mash, of course, sometime next year.
And its sequel, The Monster Swim, which people always forget about.
I'm sorry, the what?
Do you not know about The Monster Swim?
Know about the Monster
and its
Swim.
spinoff, Monster John MD.
Oh, for God's sake.
No, so Bobby Boris Pickett, the creator of the Monster Mash.
Yes.
He had that huge hit. It was a graveyard smash. We know this.
Yes, of course. But we've never actually heard the Monster Mash.
Right. And so he basically spent the next few years trying to sort of recapture the magic of the Monster Mash.
Right.
And so there's this incredible video from American Bandstand the next Halloween where Bobby Boris Pickett comes out and performs a new song called The Monster Swim. And there is, it's basically...
Is everyone in monster outfits and like bikinis?
It's not even that good.
Fuck.
It's literally just...
They found my fan fiction.
It's just that the same guys from the Monster Mash are now at a pool and they do the swim. They did the monster swim. It's literally
the same song?
It's a little different. But then the thing that's really the nail in the coffin for this song,
because they're monsters.
That's right, is when he goes, "It's even bigger than the MASH." And it's like,
no.
you can't do that.
Trying way
That's
too hard,
tempting
my
fate,
dude.
Bobby.
Oh, yeah, nothing is bigger than the MASH other than the Super Bowl in the last 10 years.
That's right.
But my thought was we just do Wits Endless Korea. But then I realized, Brian, you have bad ideas.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast, wall-to-wall bad ideas. I am the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And I'm the worst of all possible Joshes. Yes, folks, welcome to The Monster Swim,
Yes.
our ongoing coverage of MASH.
So here's the thing. I did make a list of ideas for what we could call this.
Okay.
Do we want to hear them, or are we
Throw
okay with
them
the
at
Monster
me.
Swim?
Throw a big tomato in my face.
Okay, so here's the thing. Do we want the bad ones first, or do we want, like, the actual good ones?
There's
the
good
actual
ones?
contenders.
I doubt there's good ones.
Here's the thing. I think there might be a couple of good ones.
All right.
I think just start going. Let's see what we have.
Okay, if it's a video game series, button mashing.
Well, it's not a video game series.
Great, that one's off the list. Hawkeye Tua on that thing.
Oh.
Already gone. All right.
Okay.
It's a little out of date, I think.
Yeah, I think it's probably gone. I've got soul and I am a soldier. Soldier spelled SEOULDIER.
Okay, sure.
That's a very long file name.
Yeah, it's...
I think we ran into trouble with that last week.
Right. Hawkeye's on this. Korea, of course, is in there.
Right, sure.
Trappers Keepers.
That won't work for later episodes.
Okay, great. Rage Against the Machine.
Machine.
Rage Against the Machine.
Okay, I'll put a pin in that one.
Right. Mashtick Men. Machinima. Tango with Mash. I think is pretty
like
fun.
Tango and Cash.
Like yeah.
Yeah, what's
basically.
Tango and Cash about, AJ?
No idea.
Yeah.
Or my personal favorite, Bangers of Mash.
Bangers of MASH.
Is that all of them?
That's all of them.
Because I think that last one might be it. Bangers of Mash. Are we part 2 or part 1? Do we count the movie? Because I kind of don't count the
This is a rampaging question
Right.
in the MASH subreddit is
Yeah.
do we count the movie of MASH? And I would say no. I would
say yes.
burn every copy.
I would say yes.
Really?
I would say
Yeah.
we don't count the movie. We don't count any of the books, but we do count the play.
Yeah, why? I'm sorry.
There's a play. And whenever people see the play, they're like, "Where's Klinger?" And it's like, well, he's not in the book, which is what this is based on.
Oh my God. Okay.
But Josh, your thoughts? Your thoughts here?
I think we should call it The Monster Swim, but I'm already on record.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
not going to do that. I like Bangers of MASH. I think we'll say Bangers of MASH episode 2.
Episode 2. Yeah.
Episode 2. All right.
Or Bangers of MASH 2. So what we're going to do...
Maybe we could consider the MASH movie episode to be episode 0.
Episode 0?
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
No, I think we've hit quorum on that.
Okay, great.
This show is what I grew up watching. I think I mentioned as early as our episode on Gone Home, which I think was our second episode. I talked about, there's that room in the house where you see the blank tapes that have been, had TV and whatever taped on them with the labels on them on the bookshelf. That's right, Josh.
It's tape.
And we went off on a little like tangent about like looking at our old tapes and having like a bookshelf full of tapes for like 20 years of like, this is how I watched Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. But a big collection that we had was just a ton of MASH episodes.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because when I was born, my family was living out on the furthest end of the peninsula in Washington and couldn't get any good TV because it's gray all the time and you're in the sticks.
And sorry, these were retail releases or just stuff that got taped on TV?
This was stuff that my grandma back down in San Diego was taping every day to mail up to my parents.
Oh, we were taping Fiends down in San Diego. All day and all night, just putting that tape in, burning through it, not recording the entirety of The Wizard of Oz. Mom!
Just most of it except the black and white parts.
Yeah.
My parents absolutely love this show. They, in college, like, there was a big party that they went to watch the finale.
Right. Which was, if I recall correctly, the most watched TV event of all time per capita.
Yeah. And, like, even just like flatly until you get to like the 2010s when the Super Bowl starts to outpace it. I think originally the ratings had it set at like 120 or 125 million. Now,
people?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now they calculate it at 105 million on the Nielsen.
Yeah.
But like you think about how much smaller the country was at that time in terms of population.
Yeah, this is the early 80s when this show ended.
Wow.
Everybody fucking watched it. The report was that the water pressure went down in Manhattan because everyone was waiting to use the bathroom.
That rules.
It sounds like an old wives' tale.
They flushed their toilets all at the same time.
I don't think I buy that. I think
the
that's an
final
urban
plane
legend.
flew out of Korea.
Helicopter.
Oh, God damn it.
It's okay. You haven't seen the finale. Neither of you have seen pretty much anything from this show.
No. So basically, my parents got me the complete collection of MASH.
Yeah,
the
I got
TV
that for
show.
my dad for his birthday when I was in high school. It's all in like khaki.
Yeah, it's like in a big army box, basically, and you open this thing up. And my buddy Nate and I like popped in the pilot episode, and we were like really thrilled because my parents said this is like one of the greatest shows ever made.
So you told me this story before, and you said, "Oh yeah, I was watching the first episode, and then we got to this part."
Where are we going to get $1,000?
It's more like 2,000, you know, with transportation and clothing and everything. You can stay with my parents, so there's no problem there.
Maybe we could sell Spear Chucker while he's asleep.
And the camera has just cut away to a black man, and you have no idea why all of a sudden Trapper John McIntyre, 7 minutes into the episode, has just dropped an antiquated racial slur.
Yes.
On top of what could be perceived as a chattel slavery joke. It's really something.
Yes. And that was when we went, you know what? Not for us.
Yeah.
And we immediately bounced off.
And the entire show is eventually different from this.
Yes.
But this is a holdover from the movie because, as we remember, they have a ringer in the camp who played professional football,
right?
Who's a quarterback, who's black, and so they call him Spear Chucker. Yeah.
Yep, and it sucks. And we have previously done an episode, as we said, on the MASH movie,
which we don't remember any of, but a lot of people listened to it. So it finally let the guys know that we could do another episode about this topic.
Yeah, but it's like it's one of those things that I think we all collectively came out of that being like the movie sucks, it blows, we don't like it very much.
I don't know that was my opinion on
really?
it. I also would.
I don't really remember the episode.
No,
but
I know. My take on it was I did not like enjoy it, but
okay, all right.
I thought that there were some really striking things about it visually.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that there were a few moments that did work for me in terms of the comedy of it all. But I found
Josh really liked the sexism.
That's right.
Yes.
I found that there was just this weird disconnect between the sort of abject cynicism with which it treats war.
Right.
And the way that it really fucking wanted you to love these guys.
Yeah, the Animal House aspect.
Hawkeye
of it,
and Trapper. Yeah. And so the way that these things were at odds with each other, I found it compelling, but not good, if that makes sense.
Sure, hell yeah.
But like, it's an interesting thing. It's definitely a movie worth seeing, especially when you understand just how big of a hit it was.
Yeah.
It spoke to something on a vibrational level to the people watching it in 1970.
Right. Because again, it was dealing with a war that was, waged in the 50s.
Right.
But it was
Forgotten War.
The
people refer to it. Yeah.
Absolutely. But it was, basically just the Vietnam War.
Yes.
Like they were talking about Vietnam.
Yeah. Doing the kind of classic 47 Samurai thing of like, we're talking about the thing that's happening right now, but we're going to use a story from a while in the past.
4077 Samurai, one might say.
Hey,
That's a very good point. So 20th Century Fox had the rights to the book by Richard Hooker. They were already like, okay, do we want to make it a movie? Do we want to make it a TV show? Some producers were like, let's develop it as a show. Some producers were like, let's develop it as a movie. They got the movie made. So then they're like, okay, do we make this a show or do we make a sequel? And for a little while, they tried to write a sequel based on the second MASH book.
Oh, right.
MASH goes to Maine, and turns out you don't have any sauce when you don't have the actual MASH unit. If you're not in Korea, you don't have a story. Here's just a bunch of rapists in Maine is not that interesting until Stephen King gets a hold of it. So CBS is in a position where they want to produce a lot of very new television. They made a lot of money throughout the 60s making rural programming. This was partly because, if I understand correctly, they had the wavelengths that reached further out. Like, my mom grew up mostly in El Cajon, California, so she was not in a rural area, but surrounded by hills. And basically, the only network that came in cleanly was CBS.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And so if you lived in a rural area, usually it's just the wavelengths that they had hit your TV a little bit better if you weren't near town, from what I understand. So they were able to corner the bumpkin market.
Okay.
However, America was rapidly urbanizing at this time, including my mom's family, going from Missouri in 1960 to El Cajon in 1961, right? This was also why shows like Beverly Hillbillies or The Real McCoys, which was an ABC show, were popular.
This was all facilitated, of course, by the interstate highways, which
were
being built out, connecting these urban agglomerations in a way that was not the case before. And it made it just more efficient to live in a city because now the traffic was being routed directly into and out of the cities and not really passing through other towns anymore.
Throughout the 70s, you had the Andy Griffith Show and its spinoffs, right? Including even after Andy Griffith leaves, they rebranded as Mayberry RFD. They have Gomer Pyle in the USMC. They have the Beverly Hillbillies shows, and there's like, that's a multiple set of spinoffs right there from Doug Henning. So you have Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, Green Acres. Most of these shows are running all the way up until like 1970, 1971. You still have like Ed Sullivan, which has been running since like 1948.
Right.
And so CBS was sitting in a very comfortable place, but their ratings were dropping slowly and slowly. The last two seasons of Beverly Hillbillies are better not spoken of. And Green Acres still had the juice. However, they realized that they needed to do something. It wasn't enough to just like do their own version of Laugh-In with Hicks and call it Hee Haw. They had to get rid of the rural programming altogether. So there was something called the Rural Purge of 1971, which sounds like something about it was CBS's dekulakization.
It sounds like a war crime.
God, yeah.
And I forget who said it, but they said that basically CBS canceled anything that had a tree in it.
That's funny.
So I mean, and including like old stuff like Ed Sullivan, like that wasn't rural, but he was also out.
And then they replaced all of that rural programming with reruns of The Rural Juror.
I was going to say, those poor jurors getting purged. The Rural Juror Purge.
Well, no, what CBS did was they got into the progressive market, right? Because then they produced stuff like Norman Lear.
Right.
Right? All in the Family, which becomes this huge hit. And it's a show that never shies away from the topic at hand. We're talking about racism and sexism and homosexuality. And you get to the Jeffersons, there's even episodes about like transgender characters that are like, not the worst.
Oh, not the worst. Okay.
Not the best.
Right. All right.
Right? If you're producing progressive programming, liberal programming, what's a good thing to get a hold of but the hippie movie? MASH.
Right.
That's right.
Which again is not a progressive movie by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Although it also kind of was. It was an anti-war movie.
Right, but not anti-war in the way that you would expect.
No, not in a preachy way at all. But in a way that was very resonant with people who hated the war.
Right.
So they pick up MASH and then they get Gene Reynolds to produce this TV adaptation of the movie. Of course, now instead of just the original TV idea of just going off the book, they have the movie as baggage. So they want to recreate it stylistically. they have a look that they're all ready to go for. They have a rhythm that they're going for. They have beloved characters from the movie like Duke.
Who?
Yup. And a certain quarterback by the name of Jones, comma S.
Wait. When you say they here, you're referring to the executives at CBS, right?
The executives at CBS and at Fox who own the rights to MASH
great.
overall.
So all the rural juror purgers.
The fact that MASH is
There's a surge
technically
of rural juror purgers.
the fact that MASH is technically a Disney property now is so funny.
Oh my God.
Where's my MASH ride at Disney World?
You get to go up in a helicopter.
It's like it's really intense for a while, and then you're just like one of those like Theme Park of the Future rides where you're just like slowly moving through a surgical unit, and it's just a bunch of people like muttering to themselves as they surgery, and it's like 30 minutes of that.
And it's not as fun because it's just like a 3D projection. Like they do have an animatronic Ho-John, and it's very impressive. They got Gene Reynolds to produce this show. Gene Reynolds was a former child actor. Who then in the 50s moved over to, I think he did casting for a little very brief moment, and then he became a TV director. He directed and produced the TV show based on Father of the Bride, which ran for only about a season. He had worked on a show in the 60s called Room 333, which was a comedy drama on ABC. And ABC was like, it's not funny enough, you're fired.
Been there.
So he was just free at the right time, right? They matched up the property with the person. Gene Reynolds was known as one of the best directors of actors working in TV. Alan Alda says he's the best director he ever worked with in his entire life.
Oh, wow.
That's a long ass career.
Right
there.
That's a lot of
really good
directors.
directors.
That guy's experienced a lot of direction in his life.
Yeah.
And he knew exactly at that moment which writer he wanted at the helm. So Gene Reynolds calls up Larry Gelbart.
Yeah.
Larry Gelbart was a very successful TV writer, started his career when he was 16.
Wow.
His dad was a barber. They had moved from Chicago to LA. His father was originally from Lithuania, I think. And his father was cutting Danny Thomas's hair. Danny Thomas had a hit radio show. And as he was cutting Danny Thomas's hair, he was like, my son is a really funny guy. So he'd be a really good writer for your radio program. And he got the job.
God damn it. I hate the past. I hate the fucking past.
But it doesn't, but to be fair, it doesn't not happen that way now. It's just
it's a little different because Larry Gelbart didn't come on as an episode writer. He was a gag writer. And I don't know if we really have those anymore.
We don't really have those anymore.
I guess my only point is that these days it would be happening at the country club in Beverly Hills.
Yeah. It's not just like you're cutting some guy's hair
Right.
and then, you get the job or you march into an office saying, I want a job. And they're like, you got moxie, and they throw a job at you,
It's very heavy.
It's so
still made
heavy.
out of steel.
Instead, it's my daughter is so good at playing the guitar and singing. She would be so good at opening for you on your concert tour. Taylor Swift. I'm J.J. Abrams, the creator of Lost.
When Larry Gelbart then graduated high school 2 years later, he got representation immediately with William Morris. And from there wrote lots of radio shows. And then in the 50s, made the natural progression over to TV, worked with Sid Caesar, in the same writer's room as Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner and 1,000 other very famous Jewish men who made the funniest shit of the middle of the 20th century. And from there, he was like, what's next? Broadway.
Hell yeah, Broadway's back.
So he goes to Broadway. He makes a musical based on the movie Hail the Conquering Hero that runs for 8 performances. That didn't work so well, but then he teamed up with Burt Shevelove and a very young composer who had only had his lyrics on Broadway before.
Oh,
Stephen Joshua Sondheim.
Fuck.
And they wrote,
Stephen Sondheim's middle name is Joshua?
yeah, his parents just flipped through the Bible and just pointed, and whatever names they landed on.
It was
they picked.
Boshua, but he changed it for show business.
Sure, that
reasons.
makes sense, yeah.
Josh Bornheim. So it's not even a joke, but I'm glad we're having fun.
It's good.
No, it's fun. It makes
It's not a joke. It's real. That's his real name.
Yeah.
Bornheim just sounds like a name that would have gotten changed at Ellis Island. It's like I used to be Bornheim, but I changed it to Sondheim.
Yeah.
So they wrote a musical based on a really odd thing, not a famous movie, not a big hit book at the time.
Nope.
They decided to base it off of the works of a Roman comedian named Plautus and made the musical A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
Yeah.
There's a movie adaptation of this. I don't recommend it. The play itself, that script is one of the funniest that's ever been written for a Broadway musical.
So he wrote the book?
Yeah. With Burt Shevelove. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Sondheim actually went on record saying that he hates his songs for that because the book is so funny
Right.
and Sondheim can't match the comedy of the book.
The score is largely okay.
Yeah, it's got some really good bangers in there, but for the most part, yeah, it's not his strongest.
So, funny thing happened on the way to the forum, became a huge hit, a big Tony winner. Tony's all the way down in every category except for the ones that Sondheim was in. And then from there, Gelbart and Shevelove made a movie called The Wrong Box over in England, based on a Robert Louis Stevenson story.
Oi, I shot my box.
More or less, yeah. And then Gelbart stayed in England with his family, and he worked on a play called Jump that came out in 1970.
I mean, might as well.
And then he worked for Marty Feldman on Marty Feldman's Comedy Machine. We mostly know Marty Feldman as Igor in Young Frankenstein.
Oh shit! Okay, yeah.
But he was a big comedian. He was another guy who went from radio to TV, and he was a big name at that point. And so while he's in England, he gets asked by Gene Reynolds to make this show, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll get that to you." And some time passes. They meet at one point. They get dinner. I think he comes to New York. I think they both come to New York, and then they hang out. They talk about what they want the show to be. He goes back to England, and he says the one time he ever got a call from Gene Reynolds being like, "Hey, where are those pages?" And he's like, "I just mailed them to you." And so then he had to go home and write the whole script in 2 days.
No.
So he wrote the pilot in 2 days. This isn't the era of the writer as showrunner, right? Rod Serling was that for The Twilight Zone.
Sure.
But it was Gene Reynolds' show for the most part. As the producer and as a director, it belonged more to him. So Larry Gelbart, the writer, the main writer, the head writer for it, didn't have much of a hand in casting at all. He kind of got given the actors that he had, and he wrote very well for them, which that was really surprising to me. But the last actor that they got on board was Hawkeye, and they really wanted to get Alfonso d'Abruzzo into the picture.
Whoa.
He didn't act under that name, of course, because the d'Abruzzo family had been using the name Alda for a long time now.
Yeah.
Alan Alda's father was in the original cast of Guys and Dolls.
Oh, holy shit.
He is from a show business family,
Okay.
and there are still Aldas acting all over Hollywood. There are like 3 other Aldas that show up on MASH.
So
during
what
its
you're
run.
telling me is that Alan Alda was a real Nepo baby. He was sort of he was sort of the Gracie Abrams of his time.
He sure was. His big thing was like, I have a very specific perspective about the current war going on right now, and I don't want to make something that's just McHale's Navy, which was another big military show, or Hogan's Heroes.
Oh, sure.
Many writers on Hogan's Heroes were also writers on these early seasons of MASH. He does not want it to be about capers.
He
wants
being Larry.
he being Alan Alda.
Okay.
But also Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds had the same perspective.
Sure.
Cool.
But they had to sit down and talk about it. And so
Okay.
it was the day before the first read through of the pilot that they sat down with Alan Alda and discussed.
Okay.
And
Wow.
he was like, good. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we can be liberal scolds about this, because that's what the world like. It's ridiculous to make a show about war while a war is going on and not portray it for the horror that it is.
But the strange thing about MASH, the TV show, and we'll certainly get to talking about this, is that I think it's actually a lot less reflexively cynical about the concept of war than the movie.
Yeah, it's a much less cynical TV show, and it's a much more sincere object as a result, right?
definitely.
That's the trade-off.
Yeah, and it's also that it has to be in order to sort of conform to the sitcom that it sort of finds itself in, especially early on here.
Well, in here, you're making 22 to 26 episodes a year.
Yeah.
Your production schedule is 4 days an episode.
That had to-
pilots can be a little bit different, but like when you got the gears turning, you have 3.5 days of filming, right? Your first morning, you read the script. Right? By the end of the week, you're working on the next episode. You don't have time to depict things in a Robert Altman style because that takes time, and it takes a lot of time in post-production too.
Right. A lot of sound mixing to figure out who's talking at any given point.
Just literally like scrubbing through the film itself and seeing what looks good.
Yeah, and ad-libbing and doing all this stuff that's just there to be removed later.
It's a fascinating example of something taking the things that worked about the source material and basically doing away with all the things that they don't need in order to make it into this sitcom, right? Like the over talking that's in the Altman film, the very sort of casualness of it is replaced by a very strict script, right? You can see the setups and the punchlines, you know, coming from a mile away.
They have to write it for a laugh track.
Right.
They don't want to.
Oh, they sure don't.
But they
it's
have
so
to.
intrusive and so weird.
It's so weird. If it's the 70s, you're kind of used to it.
Right.
You know, even the Flintstones had a laugh track.
Right.
But like,
well, they were there.
They were.
audience
The
was
audience
there.
was there. It was a live studio audience.
terrible strain on the animator's hands. And it's interesting because this laugh track is a big point of contention. It's there through all 11 seasons of the show, although it's there a lot less in later seasons because they write different kinds of jokes later. They really had to argue with CBS about getting the OR in the show at all. They were like, we don't. Because, I mean, you watch the surgery scenes in the movie, they're gruesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I think some of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the other thing that we were talking about, like, the things from the movie we remember. It's like the football game, the ladies who become nude, and then for me, it's also the operation scenes.
Yeah, like the arterial spray going across the room, the lights going out, everyone's singing. Yeah. And they were like, well, you don't have MASH without the surgery.
The surgical hospital?
The S
thing
part.
that it is? Yeah.
They're like, no, we're going to do it. Yeah, we can't be gruesome. You know, the most blood that you tend to see in early seasons is just like they've come out of the OR and there's some red streaks on their clothes.
Even at the time, though, even showing that, like that's in terms of like standards and practices.
10 years
of the
ago,
time,
you couldn't show a toilet tank. So, you know, you're right, Josh. It was very intense. And it was their one place where they were able to draw a red line on the laugh track. There is no laugh track in surgery.
That makes
ever.
sense. This is, though, I wanted to be clear about something. It's not a live studio audience. This is a single camera show.
This is a single camera show, largely shot on a set, but also shot in outdoor locations near Malibu. They had a camp set up in the Malibu hills. So you can watch the show. There are versions out there, not on Hulu, but there are versions out there if you got the DVD set where they duck the laugh track out. And sometimes you can, it feels weird.
Yeah.
Like they've edited, the rhythm is supposed to kind of anticipate a laugh track.
Oh, sure.
And so it's a little odd without it sometimes.
Yeah, it's sort of the experience of watching a Marvel film and then like a big name comes out and there's just like a
yeah.
moment
They
where the
pause
audience is
after the
supposed to
joke.
applaud in the room, but then you watch it later and it's like boo.
What I will say about the version on Hulu is they have done a full remaster from the original prints, which were shot in Academy aspect ratio. Was my understanding?
Well, they were shot for TV, so they're tall. If you go back to they've cropped it for the Hulu streaming release. You're missing the tops and bottoms, but it also doesn't matter because it's TV from 1971. They weren't filming. They were filming for coverage, right? They did long takes of everything because, again, you have 3.5 days to get all that in.
Right. And even with the cropping, I was surprised by how many full heads I got to see. You know, because usually when they crop it, it's like the whole forehead and up is gone.
They've done the smart version of pan and scan, the up and down version of pan and scan.
It's not like with The Simpsons where you just lose a lot of information.
Yeah, where they have jokes on the tops and bottoms of the frame. Or like like a lot of shows that, like if you watch Buffy starting in season 4 and it goes widescreen, they weren't filming for widescreen. It's not cropped. It's showing stuff that they were cropping out in the first place. So you see like equipment on the edges of the screen.
And just some guy like looking at the camera going, oh no.
Yes, actually.
Oh,
that's awesome.
So many
Hey there, you are listening to a preview of a premium episode of The Worst of All Possible Worlds. If you'd like to listen to the rest of this, head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/worstofall. And you can listen to not only the rest of this episode, but our entire backlog of premium episodes, bonus episodes, and if you subscribe at the $10 tier, you will get an extra episode of the podcast every single month. Again, that is patreon.com/worstofall. Hope to see you there.